Hello everyone and welcome to this flipped classroom for HI3 and HI4. Obviously we're doing the third and fourth influence within HR. So you should have a worksheet in front of you that looks like this. It's got a couple of questions on it, past paper questions you can see. We're going to get to that later. But pretty much you should also have this in front of you, this presentation, which I'm going to go through. And as I am going through it, you are to complete that worksheet. So hopefully this won't take much longer than about 10-15 minutes. And by the end of it, you'll be complete experts in how the economy and technology influences HR. You can immediately see these two images here. On the left is obviously the economic cycle, and on the right there's something to do there with technology. On the left, you probably think to yourself, okay, peaks and troughs with the economy. And when the economy is peaking, there are more jobs on offer, there is higher employment, there is higher consumer confidence, and alternatively, when there's a recession, or the economy is going through a trough, there is lower employment, there is less opportunity to make money, there is less demand for goods and services from customers, so less consumer confidence. And you are correct, and that's part of it, I suppose, but we need to go into a little bit more detail than that. So essentially, HI3 is the economy, economic influences. You got your diagram there once again, you'll be seeing that a fair bit. How the economy influences the HR function within a business. And obviously the state of the economy has a significant impact upon the demand for goods and services, and therefore the demand for labour. You've got to think to yourself, okay, well, if I have a business and the demand for goods and services is going up, then I'll need more goods and services, and if I need more goods and services, then I'll need more labour, which is employees. So let's get further into it. If you've got economic growth in an economy, actually before we get to that, look at these people on the left hand side, very happy. You can probably tell what they're experiencing. They're experiencing economic growth. Okay, very good. I can see you putting your hands up in your brains. During economic growth, we have a demand for goods and services increasing, and like I explained before, as that demand goes up, so does the demand for labour. Now, the thing with this is if labour shortages occur during periods of economic growth, employers will compete for employees by offering higher wages. You have to think to yourself, during periods of economic growth, we have a lot of different businesses who need more employees. Now, not every single business is going to be able to fill those spots, and the one way that they can attract employees to their particular business is basically by offering them higher wages. So during economic growth, it ends up resulting in, hopefully, an increase in the wages for employees. And this second point here, I'll read it to you now, explains it a little bit better. Unions and employees may use their strong bargaining power to demand significant wage increases. That should be an S there. Now, what happens there is that businesses are often forced to absorb these prices by increasing the price of goods and services, and therefore that creates inflation. So just let me try and explain this to you a little bit simpler, I suppose. Over time, during periods of economic growth, you may have lots of businesses going quite well. Now, they're going quite well, therefore the demand for goods and services is going up. They need to produce more goods and services. The only way to do that is by employing more people. The moment they employ more people, they may experience gaps, I suppose. They may struggle to fill each of those spots in the employee base, I suppose. The only way they can attract people is by paying them extra money. Now, it's all well and good for the business to fork out more in wages, but they're not just going to absorb that themselves, they're going to pass it on to the customers. And the customers will end up paying more for their goods and services. So that's why over time, gradually, you've got goods and services that increase in price. If you think of coffee, you'll probably laugh because I always refer it back to coffee. If you think of coffee Coffee once upon a time was about $2.20 a cup. Now it's what, $3.50? So over time, we've got inflation, essentially. Let's look at during this doesn't want to work. Let's look during a economic downturn or a recession. You'd think it's the opposite, and it pretty much is. You've got old mate over here on the left-hand side. Looks like he's just lost his job, or he's been told, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go from full-time to part-time, and he's very worried about how him and his family are going to survive. Okay, it's terrible. Awful. But during an economic downturn, the demand for goods and services decreases, and therefore the demand for employees or labour will also decrease. So suddenly, if we go back here we had wages increasing, but over here, suddenly, because they don't actually need as many employees during an economic downturn, the capacity for employees to demand a wage increase and also for the business to actually supply it, it diminishes. So we've actually got the opposite of inflation there. Well, not necessarily, like things aren't necessarily going backwards, but they stable out, they steady out, because then you have to think about all the legal documents and everything else that the government have put into play by way of, minimum wage requirements and all those types of things. But hopefully you get what I'm talking about here. So by this stage, you should have completed a couple of those questions, and we're going to move on to the next one. We're talking about structural change here in the economy. Now, there's a picture or an image on the right-hand side. This is probably from after the war, the First World War. A bunch of ladies in some sort of manufacturing factory. You don't see this nowadays. It's as simple as that. In this country, you don't see this as often. A lot of people were employed in things such as manufacturing, in the manufacturing sector, the textile sector. Even nowadays, newspapers and traditional media platforms and formats have gone downhill because people have started to get their news via Twitter and Facebook and other things like this, and on their iPads, and even Snapchat now I think is integrating a bit of news into their kind of platform. Mining, especially in Australia, you can look at the last 10 years, mining has completely changed in this particular country. 10 years ago it was a booming industry, now it's slowly bottoming out. So we're going to have to adjust. Postal services is another one. People just don't post as many letters. So when we're talking about the economy here, we're talking about that there has been a structural change in our economy. Our economy used to be rely upon goods. We now rely upon services. So the services sector accounts for 86% of total employment, which is incredible. 86% of total employment goes, or is based in the services sector. Pretty amazing. You may want to pause this video at certain points so you can complete the questions, but we're otherwise going to move on. So if these are all the industries back here that are on the decline or have virtually disappeared, or I suppose none of these will completely disappear, but they're definitely on the decline. These are all the industries that are slowly on the rise. Property, business, retail, trade, tourism, educational services, hospitality, community and personal services. You can see this guy on the right, a personal trainer. I doubt there were not as many personal trainers rolling around in the 1930s and the 1940s as there are nowadays. Every second person seems to want to have a personal training degree or pursue that as a career nowadays. So the economy is changing in terms of its structure. And here's how it influences HR. As each of these sectors grow, recruitment, selection and remuneration, i.e. HR, become important industrial issues. I'll read this second one for you. Effective training and staff empowerment have become critical to business success because more and more they are focused upon customers. You have to think to yourself, okay, look at all these services we are offering in our particular economy. Well, if we're offering a service, chances are we're dealing with customers a fair bit. And if we're dealing with customers, we have to be trained up as employees how to deal with those customers. So we have to have all these things, effective training and staff empowerment, in order to make sure that we are giving our customers the best possible service ever. And that's HR. Staff empowerment is about literally empowering your staff, making them feel like they are part of the company, making them feel like they are constantly improving. Really important. Very, very important. We're going to move on. Structural change. Now you can see, once again, this poor guy over here, he looks like he's lost his teeth. Horrible. I really hope that doesn't happen to me one day. Anyways, in Australia, we have an aging population, which means that literally we have a higher proportion nowadays of people over 65, or really just older in general, I suppose, compared to 20, 30, 40, 80, 90, 100 years ago. Now, what this means is this impacts HR managers because people are literally older. They need more flexible work arrangements. They are more likely to retire quite soon. And businesses need to be aware of that. We need to try and retain those staff. I haven't written it in here, but you can even think to yourself, HR is also impacted by the fact that a lot of people have career changes nowadays, 8 or 9 career changes throughout their life. HR are going to be impacted by that, constantly having to turn over staff. And as well as that, mentoring. Now, this has two kind of sides to it. This bloke here, he may be losing his teeth, but he has a tremendous amount of experience in whatever industry he is a part of. God knows what that is. But he could actually act as a mentor to somebody a little bit younger, take them under his wing. At the same time, he's not going to be very good with technology and other new fandangle things that all these young employees are going to be all on top of. So he himself might need a mentor. Now, how is HR impacted upon by this? Well, they need to organise it. They need to take care, make sure that he is getting enough training from all the young people, from the young employees, but also that he and his experience, all the experience that he has is gained, I suppose, or that he teaches somebody from the business that's a little bit younger, doesn't have as much experience, and he can mentor them. So there's two sides to it. Globalization. Down the left here, see a couple of people, obviously from somewhere in the United Arab Emirates or something like that, in a call center. You're probably laughing to yourself, but this is a common occurrence nowadays. A lot of businesses employ somebody from another country, to complete some sort of activity that's essential to their business. So I'll read this to you. While globalization has generally been a positive thing for business, there are a number of implications or influences on HR. There's an increased need to attract and retain a motivated and effective core group of staff. You need to make sure that you've got a really good core group of staff there. You need to make sure that you're constantly improving in terms of productivity, costs, innovation, quality, and customer service. And because you may be employing people from another country or state even, people in Queensland are a little bit different to us New South Welshmen, you need to make sure that you are dealing with or managing your multicultural workforce. They may have different approaches to power, authority, teamwork, and working independently, and you need to be aware of that as a HR manager. Otherwise, your business can go belly up. It can be very difficult if you're basing yourself out of West Hoxton to deal with somebody who you're employing who's working from New Delhi. But guess what? It's your job. You're the HR manager. You need to do it. This is a practice question, so at this point you need to pause the video and go back to your worksheet, which is just here. And I've given you space just here to complete the practice question. It's 4 marks, okay, so you should be completing this in about roughly 6 minutes, so you can test yourself. And be aware of the word at the front here, the directive term analyze. Analyze means identify components and the relationship between them, draw out and relate implications. The main one, I think, is these two here, relate implications. How does, or what's the relationship between the global economic cycle and the level of domestic employment? So pause the video, think to yourself, try and work it out, write an answer, and then we'll be back. Okay, beautiful. By now you should have paused the video and attempted the question. Congrats. Practice makes perfect. Very good. HI4. Technological influences. So how does technology influence HR? Well, you can see, we'll call her Mary. Mary and her daughter, Agnes, I suppose. She looks like an Agnes. Mary and Agnes have gone shopping. They're at Woolworths. And they are virtually doing the work themselves. That's technology. that is how technology has influenced not just a business but HR generally, because you have to think, well, someone has been trained up to insert and put in that particular machinery there, but also they need to be trained up in terms of how to use it. Oops, I'll go back. So I'll read this too. Many businesses are re-engineering and restructuring as networks, often offshore, make increasing use of new technology. For example, virtual teams using video technology. Video technology has come such a long way, and if we, take that business from West Hoxton, who's got a part of their business based in New Delhi, suddenly they can have a kind of Skype conference call with people from overseas. It's pretty incredible. A raft of electronic communications options allow firms to operate anywhere, anytime, and to harness staff through telecommuting, phones, internet, etc. It's really changed the world. This technology thing, it's quite similar for each of the 4 key business functions. You just need to think to yourself, okay, how has technology influenced HR? There'll be a practice question in a moment. Next one. While technology has allowed businesses opportunities to access their employees at home and overseas, increase productivity, efficiency, and innovation, it also has other implications, some of them negative. It's all well and good to have all these new modes of technology, but it costs money to constantly train people up. It costs money to constantly bring those pieces of new technology into your business. None of them are free, really. Maybe for the first 3 months when they give you a free trial, but after that, they're expensive. And there might be a little bit of inertia there from your employees, or a period where your employees are getting used to the technology and they may not be as productive and efficient as normal. So you need, as a HR department, you need to be on top of that. You need to be aware that you'll have to train people up. Second one, new protocols, to ensure that work-life balance is maintained, which can be tough in a society where employees are often expected to always be on call. This is certainly an expectation on teachers, which didn't exist for a long time. Teachers could go home at 5 o'clock and that would be it. No kids for something like 10 hours. Fantastic, brilliant. Now you go home at 5 o'clock and you're copying emails left, right, and centre, especially around assessment time. You would have seen this on the left-hand side. Setting up your email account on your phone has had a tremendous impact upon HR. So if you need to pause the video, go back, you can at any stage. Now, the last thing that you need to complete is this particular question. Discuss how technology has impacted human resource management in Australian businesses. Discuss. Identify issues and provide points for and against, pros and cons, positives and negatives. A discuss will always be worth, usually, I don't want to say always, will usually, I say usually because it is the Board of Studies, usually be worth about 4 to 6 marks, and they literally just split it up and they go, rightio, we're going to give 2 for the advantages and 2 for the disadvantages, and let's get the kids that answer give us a 4 out of 4 response. Let's hope that they deal with them equally. So you can now go back to the worksheet. I think that's the final slide. Yes, it is. Congratulations. You're now experts in HI3 and HI4. You can go back to this particular worksheet and you need to make sure that you've completed all of this. And once you get to that, you are done. Congratulations. You're an expert. Thank you.